This regular meeting of the Detroit Lakes City Council is called to order. At this time, I'd like to invite all of you to please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on the agenda this evening is approval of the regular agenda. Is there any item that the council member would like to add or remove from the regular agenda?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve or to add item 7F under the Finance Committee and discuss the budget.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to add item 9F, did you say?
7F.
7F to the agenda. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Any other items that the council member wishes to either add or remove? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the regular agenda as amended.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the regular agenda. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. The consent agenda is before the council. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered separately in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to either add or remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. The minutes of the regular city council meeting held June 10th, 2025, and a work session held June 12th, 2025 are before the council. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to make any changes to the minutes as they are printed? I'm hearing none, so I would entertain a motion for their approval.
I make a motion to approve both the June 10th and June 12th minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular council meeting held June 10th and the work session held June 12th. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. At this time, I'm going to adjourn the regular meeting and call to order a public hearing to receive public comments on the proposed assessments for the Shorewood Drive Street and Utility Improvement Project. And at this time, I'm going to call on our city engineer, John Pratt. John?
Mayor and Council, we've got a couple of public hearings tonight for various projects, and the first one up is the Shorewood Drive Street and Utility Improvement Special Assessment Hearing. Kelsey, you're gonna, one sec here. Yeah, one sec. Maybe I'm, let me try this. Try it again. I unplugged the second monitor. Yay. All right. Like I said, we have the assessment hearing for the proposed Shorewood Drive street improvements and then the sewer and water extensions that are going to go along with that. So the purpose of the hearing tonight, we're required by state statute anytime we do a project that will involve the special assessment of properties as part of the project financing to hold a hearing on those assessments. So we'll go back through a lot of what we covered at the public hearing in terms of what the background of the project is, the need, what the proposed improvements include, and then get into the estimated costs and special assessments. And following that, we'll have a period for comments and questions. The Shorewood Drive project in general has been on the city's radar for a number of years. We actually had it included as an alternate in the 2024 street rehab project, and then we actually removed it for a number of reasons, and then picked it back up in the fall of '24. The council called for a preliminary engineering report on it, and then we followed that up with a hearing in March of this spring. Subsequent to that hearing and that report, we did determine we needed to expand the scope of the project a bit to include a short extension of some sanitary sewer and water main to service a potential subdivision alongside of Shorewood Drive. So we amended the report and then had a supplemental hearing in April. Since that time, we finished the design, opened bids in June, and plan to construct the project later this summer. Once the contractor gets me a schedule, I'll be able to give everybody some better answers on that. Right now, I'm thinking probably August is when we're gonna see the bulk of that work begin. So again, project locations, all of Shorewood Drive in its entirety, including a couple little spur roads or one spur road around that tennis court area. It also includes, like I mentioned, a small sewer and water extension to a proposed subdivision just a little bit to the west of White Clover Beach Road. So we'll be extending some sewer and water from that point over to just down the road a bit, about 800 feet or so. As far as existing conditions, the sewer and water infrastructure on Shorewood Drive is generally in pretty good shape. It's not terribly old. It's constructed of PVC. We believe it's got remaining life, which means we don't have to do a full street and utility reconstruction project. The existing street as it sits is about a 28-foot wide rural section. The last improvement was completed in 2001. That was completed back when Becker County still was the road jurisdiction. They did a overlay on the project prior to doing the turn back and handing that street back to the city. Included some moderate shoulder widening in places. The pavement as it sits today is in pretty poor condition depending on where you're at. Some areas are worse than others, but it's beyond the point of where we can do any typical maintenance to sort of prolong the life of it. Couple of isolated drainage areas and some erosion and things like that that we need to also take care of. So as far as proposed improvements go, what we're planning by and large is a full depth reclamation. Basically, that is a process where we go in and grind all the existing pavement and underlying gravel all together. They regrade that, shape it, compact it, and kind of form a new base out of it. And then we construct a new pavement section over the top of that. In addition to that, we are going to put pavement markings down, edge lines, center lines, just for a little bit of improvement in terms of pedestrian access. We're going to narrow up the driving lanes to 11 feet compared to a typical 12-foot lane, just to help try to slow traffic a bit and provide a little bit more room for pedestrians on the edge of the road. We've got a couple minor drainage things that we need to handle, installing some culverts and things like that, and addressing that erosion on the sort of the west end of Shorewood Drive near Long Bridge, if you will. We've got an area that erodes pretty badly along the edge. To that point, we're going to install curb and gutter in that area, be the right side of this picture as you're looking at it. Put some curb and gutter down that hill just to help mitigate that erosion issues. We did discuss at one point some on-street parking on that area and determined we're not going to proceed with that, so there'll be no on-street parking in this area. And do a little realignment of Shorewood Drive as it comes into Long Bridge Road. Down at the end there, right now it's kind of a skewed angle. We want to try to bring that into Long Bridge Road at a little bit more of a perpendicular angle. Have some curb and gutter at the other end of Shorewood Drive just to reduce some corner cutting that happens. And one other note that I'd make is we're going to end up replacing most of the mailbox supports on the project, at least those that are not on your standard swing-away posts. Those will be replaced as part of the project. I mentioned some sewer and water improvements we added to the project, so this is a fairly short extension of sewer and water. Just going to run some 8-inch PVC sewer and water mains from White Clover Beach area down towards the proposed subdivision. And then as we go, we'll drop off some service laterals to some of the properties that are adjacent to this area that currently are not served with sewer and water. On to the costs. So like I said, we open bids in June, so these are numbers that I'm presenting are what we consider as bid numbers. They're based on the low bid that was provided to the city from the contractor. We've got a project cost of about $2,250,000. The bulk of it, as you can see, is tied up in the street at a little over $2 million, with the remaining $200,000 or so tied up in sanitary sewer and water main extensions. Project will be funded by general city funds or tax levy. The Water and Sewer Fund will be participating in some of those sewer and water costs. We'll be utilizing some municipal state aid funding that the city receives. The street is on our municipal state aid system, so we can use some of those funds to help pay for the city's share of the project. And then we'll have special assessments to the adjacent and benefiting properties. So those special assessments are all determined in accordance with the city's special assessment policy and some of the past practices that we've had in the past. In short, the full depth reclamation, again, the big part of the project, the way that's split is in general 50% is accessible and 50% is city share. On that note, the city ends up picking up a lot more than 50% because as we do this calculation, we include all of the non-accessible footage that's along Shorewood Drive. So that would be areas that aren't developable, like wetlands and things like that. We include that footage for purposes of calculating the rate, but we do not pass that assessment on to those properties. So the city ends up actually picking up more than the 50% that's prescribed. Sewer and water, for new sewer and water service, generally 100% of those costs are assessed to the adjacent and benefiting properties. The caveat in this case is we have some property sort of along the way to the destination that either already has service or it's undevelopable. So that portion of the cost, the city will assume that piece of it. It's about 300 feet or so of sewer and water main that the city will end up paying for out of the utility funds, and then the balance will be assessed to the benefiting properties. So when it's all said and done, this is how it shakes out between city share and accessible share. So you can see the city is picking up about 1.2 million of the $2 million of street costs. Like I said, they're picking up more than 50% of that, with the remaining 800,000 being assessed. And then you can see the sanitary sewer and water main improvements and how that shakes out, with the city picking up, another $90,000 or $85,000 or so of those transmission costs that I talked about. But the balance of that sewer and water being assessed to those adjacent properties that are currently unserved. So in total, the city's got just under 60% of the overall project cost is being paid by the city in one form or another. So those accessible costs, we go back to our assessment policy to determine how we allocate or distribute those accessible costs identified in that previous table. For the full depth reclamation or the street improvements, we look at the available accessible footage, including that non-accessible footage like I mentioned. So generally speaking, it's twice the length of the road is our available front footage. We divide the accessible cost by the available footage to determine assessment rate. On the sewer and water side of things, we determined in this case that a per lot assessment was probably most equitable. So the remaining sewer and water cost for those mains is divided by the 4 benefiting lots on a per lot basis. And then those service laterals are assessed on a per each basis. So a little bit more information, and I know I'm gonna get in a little bit of detail here, but I think there's a lot of folks that probably have questions on this. How do we calculate the footage that we assign to each property? Things are pretty straightforward. When we have nice square or rectangular lots, your footage is simply the width of your lot. Unfortunately, we have a lot of very unusually shaped lots along Shorewood Drive, a lot of irregular or pie-shaped lots where they might be narrower at the road, wider at the lake, or vice versa. And when we get into those irregular shapes, we do the best we can to assign a an average width to it that we feel is representative of the lot geometry. Other thing to note is rectangular corner lots. You can get hit if you're on a corner lot, on the side lot, as well as your front. And the way we determine that is the smaller side is considered your front side or your front footage. And you get hit for 100% of that. Plus you get hit for a half of the longer side or your side lot up to 150 feet. And essentially that provides the opportunity for about a 75-foot credit on the long side if there's an improvement on both sides of you. You're only assessed for the side of your lot that's abutting the improvement. And the final thing to pay attention to, and we do have about 7 or 8 of these properties that fall into this category, is lots abutting 2 parallel streets. The assessment policy reads that lots that are greater than 150 foot in depth can be assessed independently, in other words, on both sides for those paralleling streets. What this all boils down to, here are the assessment rates that were proposed. For the street or the full depth reclamation, we're looking at an assessment of about $44.48. I would note that I think at the public hearing, we estimated that to be at about $45, so it came in very, very close to what we had estimated, which is good news. And then you can see the assessments for the sanitary sewer and water main services below that. So this is a typical or example of special assessments that you might see. The full depth reclamation, if you have a 50-foot lot, about $2,200, 100-foot lot, $4,400, 150-foot lot, $6,600. And then if you're one of the lots that has sewer and water, that sewer and water component in itself would be about a $33,000 assessment. And they would also be paying for the street improvements on top of that. So just trying to illustrate what the different scenarios are there. Assessments would be levied against the benefiting property starting in 2026. For the full depth reclamation, we have 2 assessment rolls, I should point out, a roll A and a roll B. Roll A is for the full depth reclamation, and that is applied on a 7-year term versus the sewer and water is spread over a 20-year term. That's the reason for the 2 different rolls. Property owners have the option to prepay all or a portion of those special assessments just to reduce interest charges, just like any loan effectively. The city also does have a deferral policy. If you meet certain criteria, you can request a deferral on your assessment. Essentially, you got to be 65 years of age or older, permanently disabled, and or military personnel on active duty that meet the following. You have to have ownership, fee simple ownership. Property's got to be homesteaded, and you have to meet income requirements. Then if that's the case, the special assessment's deferred until either sale, death of owner, property's non-homesteaded, or you can no longer show the hardship. Those applications are available at City Hall. You can visit with Heidi if you have questions on that. That application is something that has to be filed every year prior to November 15th, and there's a $10 fee for that. With that, Mayor, I'll turn it back.
Okay, thank you, John. First of all, I'm going to open it up for any questions you might have, and then I'll allow some time if you want to make a comment about the project. So is there any questions that you would have for the city engineer about the assessments? Yes, sir.
Dan Josephson, 1314 Bay Ridge Drive. Couple questions for the city engineer. Can I put a driveway in my backyard?
I would have to look at that to see if it meets the setback requirement. Probably not in your location, if I'm going from
Maybe it's a
memory.
better question for Larry, because it's a zoning issue. Can I put a driveway out my backyard, because my parallel street, because I've got Bay Ridge Drive on my front yard, and the backyard is Long Bridge Road.
That's not a question that comes up very often, so
I can point you to the
if
right.
answering it now, we can talk about that tomorrow.
All right. Then what type of road is Shorewood Drive? Real feeder?
Yeah, it would be considered I don't know if I'd go, I don't know, we don't have a formal classification system. If I had to place it, it's either arterial or local, somewhere in there.
Okay. How many double frontage lots are there in the city of Detroit Lakes?
I have no idea.
Okay. How many are in this project?
I would have to count them.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else have any questions for the city engineer? If not, I would open it up for any comments you wish to make. And if you do want to make a comment, I would ask you come to the podium, state your name and address for our minutes. Of course. Why wouldn't you?
All right.
Name and address, Dan?
Dan Josephson, 1314 Bay Ridge Drive. I live at the corner of Shorewood Drive and Long Bridge Road, which would be my backyard. My front yard is Bay Ridge Drive. So I am one of the unique properties. There's 42 that I was able to find in the city of Detroit Lakes. I would say about 90% of those are within Ward 3. And they are unique in the nature that there is a front yard and a rear yard, and there's a street on both front and back. From what I can tell, frontage on 2 streets, which is Section 8, subdivision 2, paragraph J, it talks about double lots, and you can't have a driveway in the backyard or more than one driveway in a parcel. So basically, that Long Bridge Road improvement has no benefit to me. No more benefit to me than it does to the city engineer and the city attorney that used it for riding their bicycle. So in addition to that, there's 9 of these parcels on this project that have double frontage. Of that, 5 of them are being assessed special assessment, 4 of them are not. So we need to take a look at how we're doing this. We've got 42 parcels, 10% of those are within this project. 5 are being assessed on this project, 4 are not. The 4 that are not are along White Clover Beach. White Clover Beach was assessed last year, so I'm trying to figure out if that's the reason why they're not being assessed, or if there's some other reason why those 4 parallel lots are not being assessed. But my main concern is that I've got no benefit to this project other than it runs in my backyard. So I don't think I should be assessed any more than anybody else in the city of Detroit Lakes. I support the project because it does need to be done, but I don't think it has any greater benefit to me than it does to anybody else within the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Any further comments? Okay, if not, that public hearing is closed, and I would reconvene the regular meeting and entertain a motion, and I would call on the Public Works Committee Chairman, Zeman.
Okay, Mayor, the committee has reviewed this, and we go ahead and give consideration to the resolution to approve the adoption of the assessment rules for the Shorewood Drive Street and Utility Improvement Project, and I so move.
Is there a second? There's no second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the adoption of the assessment rules for the Shorewood Drive Street and Utility Improvement Project. Discussion by the council.
I'd like a clarification on Mr. Josephson's question.
Wendy, move a little closer to that mic, will you? Thank you.
I thought I had brought it close enough.
Okay.
Hello. So in terms of his question, so if he's sitting between 2 streets and he's getting assessed for the work done on Shorewood Drive, right? And then 2 or 3 years down the road, we come along at Bay Ridge, is that the name of the street? And we do improvements there. He's again going to be assessed, or not him, but all of those properties he references twice?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, to address the question or maybe visit the policy as it stands right now. The assessment policy as it reads is you can be assessed for parallel streets if your lot depth is greater than 150 feet in depth. Maybe a bit of an editorial, and I hesitate to do this, but I think I understand the intent of where this came from once upon a time. If you think back to typical block neighborhoods, they're usually 300-foot deep, and you had lots that were very commonly 140 to 150 foot in depth. And I think the way that policy was wrote was aimed at back then of folks that maybe bought a lot behind them and you were literally owned on two streets, but you could have developed two of those lots, right? You chose to buy to put an outbuilding on or whatever it might be. And the intent, I think, was to say, well, you're going to be assessed for both of those independently. So that's how the policy is wrote. And the city administrator and I talked about this at length, and we figured this topic would surface at the meeting. And so quite simply, we try to apply the policy the way it's wrote. And certainly the council can consider changing that policy or deviating from that policy as you wish. But if the lots are more than 150 foot in depth, we didn't feel like we had probably the proper standing to just unilaterally ignore the policy.
Kelsey, if we approve this motion, can we change things later? If the council decides to change our assessment policy?
Well, Mayor, if you adopt it as is, you're adopting the assessment role as is. So the assessments for those double frontage lots would be certified as part of this assessment role. One more thing I was going to add to John's comments. We looked at previous projects and we have applied the policy the same way. So from a consistency standpoint, that's why we put it together the same way as what has been done in the past. But it is certainly something for the council to consider. But if you wanted to deviate from it, you'd have to remove these, I'll take Dan's word for it, 9 parcels
I thought it was 7, but
out of this assessment role for some other consideration.
And then what happens to the money that gets removed by removing those lots?
Then it's viewed as unaccessible footage, as John explained earlier, and the rest of the taxpayers of the city basically pay that cost.
Okay. So with that information, is there further discussion?
I guess one point of clarification, I didn't quite understand. Dan's question is that
Matt,
there's.
use your mic closer, yeah.
Sorry. One question I have is Dan pointed out that there's 9 parcels that could be assessed. There's 5 that are and 4 that aren't.
yeah, to be honest, I need to look at that. When Kelsey and I looked at that, I came up with 7 that have this situation, but
Yeah,
I clearly could be wrong.
I think to answer the question about the White Clover Beach Road one, so a couple of them are getting assessed, and those ones are actually getting water and sewer assessments as well, so those are more sizable assessments. But you might be familiar, there's a lot of low area right off of that corner. So those ones that are basically the undevelopable areas, even though they have double footage, did not get an assessment because it's basically low area. Right.
And to Kelsey's point, sorry, Mayor, if the council wants to make this change where we sort of disregard the parallel street factor, by my count, the way it is right now, we would need to apply that not just to Dan's property, but the other properties that we've treated the same. And I think in total was around 7 was the number that I had in my head, that we would need to revisit those.
Okay, is there anyone that wishes to amend the motion at this time with that information?
Well, I've got a question, because we talk about the total cost of this project, and then Kelsey said we'd take that property to assess it throughout the entire city, but why don't we go ahead and we know what the cost is and assess it to that project on Shorewood Drive for that whole area, because that's where that project is being done at. I think that'd be more fair than having an assessment over the entire city.
So if we were to do that, would we have to have a new assessment hearing? Because everything would change, right?
That's correct. We'd have to send out new assessment notices to all the other property owners.
Okay,
Mayor?
Wendy?
Not to muddy the waters further, but if we move forward with the assessment roles as they stand, and our assessment policy was reviewed, taking into account that these things happen. So if there were work done, and the policy was changed, and there was work done on on the other side of the road for whatever these properties are at, we will have created a policy that would avoid that I mean, is that? Am I asking a really messy question? I mean, I'm trying to find a way to move forward without,
Yeah, Mayor and
but I want to be sure that we're
Alderman
fair.
Spry, I think I understand where you're going. My suggestion would be that if you want to modify the policy such that we're not doing these parallel assessments, or we change that in some fashion or another, the reality is, in this case, I would prefer not to, in every case that I can think of on this project, I would prefer not to assess these properties for this project and rather assess them for some future project, because that is their front, would be some future project. In all cases, we are effectively hitting these properties for what would be deemed to be the back of their lot. So I would prefer to just assess them again in the future and not now. Yeah, that's their primary benefit.
Okay, with that information, is there anyone that wishes to amend the motion?
I'd make a motion, or I'd make,
Mike?
I'd like to amend the motion to remove those 7 properties.
Second.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion on the table to amend the original motion. Any discussion on the amended motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. So now the motion is amended. And we still have that motion on the table. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you for coming, folks from Shorewood area. And at this time, I will adjourn the regular meeting and call to order a public hearing to receive public comments on the 270th Avenue Utility Improvement Project. And again, I would call on City Engineer John Pratt. I just want to remind the council to use your mics a little closer so that our citizens can hear us.
Mayor and Council, second hearing for the evening. This one is focused on proposed street and utility improvements to a portion of 270th Avenue. Again, just like before, anytime we're doing a project that would potentially utilize special assessments, we're required to hold a hearing to gain input, answer questions, and things of that nature. So we'll go through the project need and some of the background, what we're planning to do, and again, get into the costs and estimated special assessments, followed by a period for question and comment. Little bit of background on the project. We've done a prior phase of street and utility extensions on 270th Avenue, essentially from South Shore Drive to the south edge of South Shore Park. We did give some consideration at that time to going further to what would be this project, and ultimately decided to defer action in that area until a future date. That date may have arrived. Effectively, the reason that we're looking at these improvements is just to support continued growth and development in this area. As council's aware, there's been a number of annexations and plans for future development to some of the adjacent property, and at some point, we need to get sewer and water extended further south to support those activities. In addition to that, we have had at least one property owner approach the city regarding a failing septic system adjacent to this project area and inquired about the possibility of sewer and water. So bit of a schedule laid up there. That is a very, I would say, optimistic or aggressive schedule that involves potentially getting the project underway this year and getting the underground infrastructure at least in the ground. Whether or not we'd be able to get the full street completed this year before freeze up is maybe a bit questionable at this point. But that is the aim right now. As far as project location, like I said, 270th Avenue, this project would go from the end or the southern edge of South Shore Park and go about 800 feet to the south. What we have out there right now, we have sewer and water extended to the south edge of South Shore Park, but that was put in 2021. There is currently no sewer and water within the project area. Those adjacent properties utilize well and septic systems. The existing street is a 24-foot wide rural section. Generally speaking, the pavement's in pretty poor condition. Drainage is just provided by ditches. This is a rural section roadway right now. What we're planning to do would be to extend sanitary sewer and water infrastructure, some larger infrastructure down this corridor, as we anticipate this serving a larger area in the future. So we'd be looking at like a 10-inch sanitary sewer main, 4-inch service laterals, cleanouts, things like that. The depth that we're projecting for that sewer would allow for gravity service to those adjacent properties along 270th. We'd extend a 12-inch water main and service laterals, put in some fire hydrants, things like that. I would note that property owners would be required, when they go to connect, they're responsible for that connection from the edge of their property to their building or well or septic or however they want to tie that infrastructure into their homes. There's a number of ways you can do it, but that is an added cost and action that the property owners need to take in order to connect to that infrastructure. As far as the street, the short version is we'll match what we started out there that goes along the park right now, which is a 40-foot wide urban section. So that includes curb and gutter. We'd construct it to a 10-ton design standard. We would lower the roadway slightly from where it's at right now. So again, it would match that section further to the north. We would extend the storm sewer that was installed in the 2021 project. We had planned on that and sized it accordingly. So we'd run that storm sewer further down, collect the runoff by inlets in the street, and then discharge that stormwater to the basin that's located in South Shore Park. That basin was actually sized when we built it to accommodate runoff from this area, so we're already covered from a stormwater treatment standpoint. Estimated costs, we're looking at a project cost of just over $1 million. Again, not unusual. The bulk of the cost is tied up in the street at about $440,000. And then the other elements of the project make up the balance of it. Project will be funded by general tax levy or general city funds, utility funds, meaning the sewer fund, the water fund, stormwater fund, and then special assessments to the adjacent properties in accordance with the city's special assessment policy. And what the policy says in this case is this represents new water and sewer service to this area. We would assess 100% of the sanitary sewer and water main for a standard sanitary sewer and water main is what I should say. And then the city assumes any oversized cost. And oversized cost is considered anything larger than an 8-inch main for sewer and water. So we do have some oversized infrastructure in this case. So the city utility funds would be picking up that cost associated with those oversized mains. From a street standpoint, we're viewing this as a street reconstruction project, which means it would be a 50-50 split between the city and the property owners. We assess 50% of what we call a standard street, which is 38 feet wide, 5 ton. So the city assumes that remaining 50% plus any over width or over capacity when we beef those roads up to handle a 10-ton axle. There's a little thicker pavement and things like that, and we assume that cost as a city. From a stormwater perspective, 100% of the stormwater costs would be paid by the stormwater utility fund. So this is how all of that shakes out in this particular case. You've got the city picking up just a little more than half of the project cost and the balance being assessed. So then those assessable costs again, look at the special assessment policy and how we allocate those. It's the same story as usual. We're looking for the accessible units, how much footage we have available, and divide that by the accessible cost by that unit to come up with a rate per foot, generally speaking. We did that for all aspects of the project, including the sewer and water and the street in this case. The only exception to that is service laterals are assessed on a per each basis. So we're looking at all that footage that's adjacent to the project and then come up with that rate. Same thing, a little bit easier in this case. All of these lots are fairly rectangular in nature, so the front footage is simply the width of the lot. There are some corner lots, but we're not making improvements on two sides, so I won't go over that. And then again, service laterals are on a per each basis. So This is how the assessments calculate out in this case. It'd be about $115 a foot for the street improvements. Again, the stormwater is not assessed. Water main would be $108 a foot. Sewer main, $50 a foot, and then you can see the charges for the service laterals there per each. So these are some example assessments for 100 to 150 foot wide lots. What I would point out is there are some lots out there that exceed this width. There are some rather large parcels out there where folks have bought an adjacent lot and put an outbuilding on, or bought half of an adjacent lot and split it with their neighbor, resulting in some properties that are, I think, up in that 250 foot plus range in terms of footage, which drives the special assessment costs well north of what you see. I know there's some, at least a couple of properties that are up into the $70,000 area. In addition, the property on the west side, which would be in the South Woods Shores Estate project, there's a large undeveloped tract that would be assessed, and I think that's several hundred feet in length. But as far as the residential properties along the road, there are some that are quite large. Moving ahead, if the project moves ahead, is the assessment hearing. We would move the project into design, get bids, and then we would be back here for an assessment hearing after we take those bids, when we have firmed up costs. Right now, we're just going off of my estimates, and we take those bids and recalculate the assessments based on those. Probably be back here in sometime around the October timeframe for that hearing. And then those assessments, if they were adopted, would be levied starting in 2026 likely, and applied over a 20-year term. Again, folks can pay all or a portion of those assessments to help reduce those interest charges. I would note we had a little bit of a discussion at the Public Works Committee meeting relative to some different ideas of what we could do to potentially modify how we're assessing this project due to some of the large costs associated with some of these special assessments. Things that have been mentioned are, deferments and deferring a portion of the assessment, for example, the sewer and water portion for some period of time to allow folks more time to, live out the life of their well and septic systems and prepare for the assessment, things like that. We potentially do that just to the sewer and water portion of the project, not the street necessarily. And then another option that was kicked around was putting a cap on the footage and deciding that, we're gonna cap footage at some number to try to help mitigate some of those costs. So back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience, again, that would have any questions for the city engineer or city staff? And then I'll open it up after that for any comments you might have. Any questions? Steve? You got a question or a comment?
So you're saying that you won't finish this year?
I'm sorry. I think it's gonna be difficult to finish the street work. I think we can get the underground utility work done and get that in. But getting the street done, we're gonna be awfully late in the season to be pouring
Are we able to
concrete.
hook up to it then?
If we got all the utility work done, you'd be able to hook up to it. That's correct.
Not, I need to put in a new drain field in.
Yep, nope, I understand. And I think there's a good reasonable chance that we could get that underground infrastructure in. It's just when we start getting into late October and November, it becomes awfully difficult to be building a street at that time with temperatures.
Does that answer your question, Steve?
Well, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from anyone? If not, is there anyone that wishes to make a comment? And if so, would you please come to the podium, state your name and address for our minutes, and speak into the mic so we can hear you.
I can do that.
All right?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you for allowing the time for the public comment on this proposed utility expansion. So my name's Brad Erickson. My address is 2103 270th Avenue. I know that my neighbor wanted to be at this meeting. He's out of town. He sent some letters to the council members. He just happened to be gone. He's my neighbor right to the south. I want to give thanks to John Pratt and Kelsey for giving some time to meet with me to discuss this individually also. A little background on our property. We built in 2001 in the original Lake Forest development. The very first one that was there was 6 lots. I went to the city, told them what I wanted to do, applied for my permit, and they said you needed to put in a well and septic. So here comes Lake Forest, first through 8th editions. And after that, they were required to have city sewer and water, before any new builds had happened. So we, along with the other property owners, have invested into wells and septic, obviously with our builds. And mine was just recently inspected for a home sale and passed, which did fell through, and I did send some notice to all the council members about that. It's a different topic. So while we don't have an immediate need for this utility, and I know that one of the neighbors does, I know that the city wants it for growth to the south, and they're gonna get the city will get more of a benefit currently than most of us as property owners will get. So because of that, I know that they're trying to do some of this in 2025. But I would like to see this project not start until 2026. To me, this seems a little rushed, and, the bid process, is that really enough time, I guess, John, to get the best bid possible versus, 2026 thing? I know Steve's kind of in a tough spot, but I think it being rushed maybe would go against us in cost. I do find it interesting that, and I realize there's more to our project, but our project cost was 1.1 million, 800 feet. The Shorewood Drive project is miles and was $2 million. Kind of interesting. So like I said, if we could hold this off till 2026, partly because the fact that we're trying to sell our home, and if you guys got a chance to read my email before and what kind of issues we're already dealing with, this is gonna kind of create further issue for us because of the extra cost and the assessments that we're looking at. We are one of the lots that are larger out there too. So with Pratt's comments, if there's any way that we could cap the assessments on this deal to help all of us property owners, that would be greatly appreciated. I am requesting a deferment of the sewer and water assessments portion, not the street portion. That'd be great, but I understand that's maybe not realistic, for a period of 10, maybe up to 15 years to get the benefit out of our existing systems that we've invested into, especially since mine just, passed inspection. And just wanted to point out that, we originally built out in 2001, have paid a fair amount of city taxes over the years with not a lot of direct benefit. I'm not saying we didn't receive anything, but so the fact if we could get a cap to kind of limit what we're looking to pay here would certainly go a long way, so that we could maybe work on focusing on the cost of the street part of it before we have to start paying, the city and sewer water part that we don't quite need at this point. Because the first number that I calculated based on John's report was pretty shocking. It was that $70-some thousand number, and that's just not feasible. I'm sorry. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any further comments from anyone? If not, that public hearing is closed, and I would call on Chairman Zeman from the Public Works Committee.
Okay, the Public Works Committee has reviewed this project, and we give consideration to approving the resolution, ordering the improvements and authorizing plans and specifications for the 270th Avenue utility project. Can I so move?
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution ordering the improvements and authorizing plans and specs for the 270th Avenue utility project. I have a question, John. If we move forward tonight, what about those possible deferments on the sewer and water portion?
Yeah, Mayor and Council.
When would that be handled?
Well, we would want to probably have a handle on that going into the assessment hearing when you order the preparation of the assessment roll. So the reality is we do have some time to look at some proposals or some different scenarios of what that could look like financially for the city and for the property owners. The action tonight is simply to decide if you want to move ahead with preparation of plans and specs. So in the coming months, we could come back to the council with some proposals if that's your directive.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is this kind of like Willow Springs, as he's asking about, where we put the streets in, but we don't give them the city sewer and water like your neighborhood, Sean? 77 grand, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's the size of the lots that's really problematic in this case. And to answer your question, Alderman Dahlman, there's a little bit of a different situation, I would say, than Willow Springs, in that Willow Springs was only going to serve Willow Springs. It was never going to be extended. In this case, we need to extend infrastructure down 270th Avenue, assuming that we want to continue growth in that area. We have to get that sewer and water further south if we want to service those annexed areas with municipal infrastructure. So that's a little bit of the unique scenario in this case. Is it's not just for this, it's also further down, which is why we have larger mains, which is why the city utility funds are participating already to some extent. The question is, will they participate more?
Further questions or discussion by the council? Matt?
Two questions. One, is that been standard practice to get all the underground work done and then pave the following year? I mean,
No.
would that be gravel for the winter?
It would be gravel likely for the winter. And again, I need to sit and pencil this out in my head a little bit clearer in terms of timelines and what we need to do in terms of bidding timelines, how fast we can pull the plans together and things like that. My notion is right now that we would be awfully late in the season to be constructing curb and gutter and pavement and things like that. So no, it's not typical. Normally, we would like to finish those projects and at least get a bituminous base course down or something like that. Could we withstand that area in gravel for the winter? I think that's possible. There's not a tremendous amount of traffic. It's not ideal, but in order to get that infrastructure in and available for connection this year, that would be one option.
Okay. And then second question is, looking at this, are we to the point where we're past the best bids in the summer? You know, would we get favorable bids if we threw this out there for spring of '26, or look in your crystal ball and what do you see?
Sure. Oh, that's a fair question. I mean, generally speaking, no, this isn't an ideal time to be saying, here's a project and get it done. The flip side to that is that there is scenarios where this actually can be an attractive project if we don't make the contractor finish the road construction. And the reason I say that is underground utility contractors that are digging and putting the water mains in and the sewer mains in don't have a lot of work available in that October, November timeline because they need to have been done already so that the road crews are in working on building the road, right? The underground crews are at home because there's just not a lot of available work. But if you can have a project where they can come in and effectively work until the frost kicks them out, and you can cap it with gravel and grade it out for the winter, you could potentially have a favorable bid in that scenario.
Gotcha. One last question, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
If we put it out for bid and proceed tonight, we still have the option to deny if bids don't come back favorable, correct?
Yeah, correct. There's a number of more steps the council's gonna have to take, and one of which would be approving the bid and entering into a construction contract.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion by the council? Wendy, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, the question I have on this is this gentleman's problem is that it's $76,000 because it's an oversized lot. And what I don't want to hear is that we're gonna cut some of that expense off for them and then spread that existing dollars over the whole city for their taxes. Doesn't do me any good on the north side of town. This is the project for the south side of town, and whether or not we want to do this, but we've had those houses sitting there, and, we want to hook up to them. It's gonna come at an expense, and the biggest problem here is that he's got a super large lot, and that's where this cost is coming in. So that is a concern of mine, how we're gonna do that. And like Matt said, we'll wait and see where these bids come in, but if it is a problem, maybe we wait and do it next spring and see what can work out between now and then with helping this man get his cost down on that $76,000 expense.
Wendy, did you have something?
No question. I just wanted to make a comment that I appreciate the work of city staff who work to find options and recognize the human and financial impact our projects can have on people, and that you're willing to take that extra time. And I just want to say I appreciate it. And I'm in favor of moving forward, knowing that those conversations will continue to find ways to mitigate some of that.
Okay, any further comments? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, folks. The Detroit Lakes City Council has adopted a rules of decorum for public participation in city council meetings. And there's 25 different rules, of which I'm not going to read, but I will make a couple points of emphasis. I see there's 25 people that signed up for the public forum. I don't know if people were signing up just because they were thinking they needed to be at the meeting, or if there's actually 25 of you that do want to speak. But I'm going to just hit a couple points here. If you do wish to speak, please raise your hand, and I will call on you individually. When you want to speak to the address to the council, come to the podium. Again, we want your name, address, and please tell us the subject of your comments. All comments should be directed to me as the presiding officer. I'm not going to allow any comments regarding city employees or city council members. And any requests for any, by any of the commentators for action will be referred to our city staff or assigned to an appropriate city council committee for future consideration. There will be absolutely no dialogue between commenters and the city staff or city council. Our rules of decorum also state that the public comment period shall be 15 minutes. And if there's 25 people that want to talk for 10 minutes, it's not going to work. So I'm going to restrict it to 1 minute each. So that's not going to give 25 people a full minute to speak, but it'll hopefully, we'll get through most of them. We have a fairly large agenda this evening, a lot of stuff to cover, so we need to keep this within that 15 minutes. And I'm going to ask the vice mayor to be the official timer for the 1 minute time period. And so with that, I would entertain anybody that wishes to come to the podium and make a comment at this time. And if you do, you can raise your hand and I will call on you. And if you don't, then we won't have a comment period. Nobody wants to speak? Okay. So much for that. We'll move on to the regular agenda. And there's a couple items I'd like to move to accommodate some folks that need to get out of here before the meeting gets any later. And so without objection, I'd like to go to item 6B on the Public Works Committee agenda. Chairman Zeman.
Okay, item 6B. Becky Mitchell would like to come forward and talk a little bit about an idea that she has for recreating the world's smallest gas station in front of the Greystone Hotel. So Becky, do you want to come up and give us a few words on that?
Good evening, Becky.
Good evening. Yes, I was contacted by a lifetime resident, actually, of the city of Detroit Lakes. The world's smallest gas station comes up on the social media sites on a regular basis of, unique Minnesota. I grew up in Minnesota, those sorts of things, and it sparks a lot of conversation. And so this gentleman and his wife's idea was, what if we reconstructed a replica building of that, just as a photo op, a nod to the past, so to speak. I did meet with Superintendent of Schools Mark Jensen. We've talked about perhaps engaging a few of the age groups into some history lessons about development and how things change and what's good and challenging about that. And also having the construction trades class help actually build that structure. And so right now we're just kind of in the exploratory stages of that. I guess the next steps would be to do a rendering and come back to the Public Works Committee.
Okay, so is there action tonight, Ron?
There's no action, and we also had the people here from NDOT here too, and there's apparently going years back, there might be some action with SHPO in that area too, but it's a 3.5 by 4 foot building, so it's not that big, and it'll be right out in front where we have our little sailboat right now, so I'll give you an idea, but Becky's gonna do some more research on it and come back to the council and let us know what she's got going with it.
Thank you, Alderman Zeman. I guess I didn't mention that. The location would be right out in front of the Greystone in that triangular piece of property. Right now, there's a sailboat there and a few benches. I have already spoken with MnDOT on any concerns they may have, and they basically just would like to be involved and approved any plans, but the ultimate control of that area is under the city's jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Becky.
Without objection, I'd like to take item 6B under the liquor and gambling control, and I'd call on Alderman Stearns. Or I'm sorry, 9A. Okay. Sorry, Mike.
Throwing me for a loop.
Already
All
did
right.
6B.
Yes, so Liquor and Gambling Control Committee met this afternoon, and there was discussion regarding funding a pavilion celebration in October, kind of a finale celebration as we prepare to replace the pavilion with an updated pavilion. So I will have Kelsey speak to some of the details, and we can discuss further.
Mayor and council, yes, so Becky and the History Museum kind of stepped forward about hosting, again, kind of a finale or a celebration of the pavilion. In October, that's kind of our last weekend, still early enough before things freeze up. Yeah, we can basically still fit it in yet this year. So the request was for the city to help with the cost of having the bands. It's really not permissible expense with the sales tax that we are receiving for the project. So we are asking the liquor fund and the liquor and gambling committee to help fund the bands. The request was for $7,500. I believe the committee was kind of split on that, if it should be the full amount or some other amount. So I'll kind of leave it at that. But again, just want to say thanks to Becky and the museum stepping up and willing to kind of organize the event if the city is willing to help sponsor it.
Okay, with that, Mike, are you prepared to make a
just
motion?
a little
or-
additional information. So there was a, lively discussion on the dollar amount. All four of the people on the committee did, support the project to some extent and some contributions. So the ranges was from the $3,000 amount to the $7,500 that was requested. So, so with that, I am going to make a motion for consideration to funding a pavilion celebration in October with the Liquor and Gambling Fund contributing $7,500.
Is there a second? Did I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. So before I proceed any further, I'm going to call on the city attorney. We're spending money. Is this going to require two-thirds of what? Two-thirds of this group or the whole council? I know we've covered this ground before.
Well, I'm gonna see if I can get it right this time.
Okay. I think so. Well, while you're looking that up, Charlie, I'm going to open it up for any discussion because we do have a motion and a second. Is there discussion by the council? Further discussion? Okay.
So my answer would be two-thirds of all members of the council. So two-thirds of all members of the council is 6 votes.
Okay. Any further, last minute further discussion? Otherwise, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
Okay, I'm going to take a roll call. Craig?
Yeah, go ahead. I'd say aye. Go ahead.
Aaron?
Nay.
Wendy?
Aye.
Ron?
No.
Matt?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
So we're short. We're 5 to 2, so the motion fails. Does somebody want to make another motion?
I'd say $3,000.
Is there a second of the motion?
Second it?
Motion's been made and seconded to provide $3,000 for the pavilion going away party. Discussion on that motion.
What is, I was under the impression the $7,500 and the $3,000 amounts were to hire bands? That's the only amount?
To
I
help
mean, that's
offset the
only-
bands,
offset
offset the
that.
costs, yep.
So the anticipated cost of the bands was around $10,000, with $7,500 being requested from the city, from the Liquor and Gambling Fund. There were additional marketing costs that probably would put up it was estimated that the total cost of the project would be $12,000, or the celebration. So the request started at $7,500.
Further discussion. We have a motion to support it with a $3,000 stipend from the liquor fund. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I,
Aye.
I only heard two dissenting, is that correct? So the motion,
Would fail.
what?
You need 6.
Well, I can't add that fast.
So
So the motion fails.
I'll make a motion that we do $5,000. That would be half of the costs.
Second.
Motion's been made to provide $5,000. Further discussion? I hope not.
Here's
Go
the
ahead,
question I
Sean.
have, and I'll keep it brief, I promise. What is the value that would pass? I mean, some of you voted against it at 3,000, so why would, and then some of you voted against it at 7,500. What's gonna make it pass here? What are we trying to accomplish? I mean,
We haven't taken a vote yet,
Great question.
well, that's fair. That is a fair question, but.
but it's also a fair question that I've been sitting on this liquor store committee for the 2 terms I've been on here, and everybody keeps on asking for money from this liquor fund, and there's gotta be a point where we stop. And this is called negotiating, okay? We went from $7,000 to $3,000 to $5,000. I'm fine at $5,000.
Okay, let's call the question then. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Without objection, we're gonna have a great party. You're all invited.
Bring your own.
Without objection, I'd like to go to the Public Works Committee. Item 6D.
Okay, item 6D is consideration to approving a special event application for Project 412 for the Dick Beardsley race coming up on September 6, 2025. And I'm going to call James from 412 to come up and give us a little background on what's going to happen on this year's race.
Hello, James.
Hello. Thank you, council members and Mr. Mayor, for inviting me tonight. We had a good discussion yesterday with Public Works about the routes for this year, so we're very confident in that space and utilizing the city streets on September 6th. But tonight, I just wanted to come here and acknowledge that we are, myself, along with Project 412, are excited to bring the 30th year of Beardsley races to Detroit Lakes. From my history in running races, this is top 1%. Not many races get to 30 years, I can tell you that. So it's something to celebrate. We know Dick Beardsley himself is excited. Every time we bring up 30 years, he acknowledges it. Has it really been that long? So he's excited to come back to town. We're excited to bring it back to town and keep it going for another 30 years. So with that, we're we're continuing the pasta feed on Friday night with some speakers along with Mr. Beardsley himself and some friends. So we're doing that Friday night and then hitting the streets on Saturday morning with a 5K, 10K, half marathon, and then finishing the morning with a 1 mile youth run. So that's some fun. And then to end the celebratory 30 years, we're going to have a nice concert series that afternoon to just recap and enjoy the time, because us runners, we like to take a siesta and then maybe come back and celebrate a little bit more. So that's the goal for all day Saturday. If anyone's interested, please spread the word. I don't know the direct economic impact, but obviously it makes an economic impact post Labor Day here in town. And so please spread the word. DickBeardsleyRaces.com if you're interested in learning more and or volunteering, or any other questions can be addressed at info@DickBeardsleyRaces.com. Otherwise, thank you, and we're looking forward to a great year and celebrating 30 years.
All right, thank you, James. What do you anticipate the amount of participants to be?
Yeah, so I'm a numbers guy and I like to play on numbers. So in our head, it's 3,000 participants for 30 years. Now, race has usually pre-COVID averaged around that 1,500, maybe to 2,000, 5-10 years ago. Right now, we're averaging 12 most recently. So when we look at 3,000, we think that's between participants, volunteers, spectators, all encompassing. So let's help get to that 3,000 number.
All right, well, thank you,
And
thank you for
James,
coming.
This is for all ages, correct?
All ages, that's why we like the youth run. Start them young and keep them entertained. And yeah, we see anywhere from 6-year-olds to, I don't know the results from last year, but there had to be a couple 80-year-olds running in the races.
Ron, you could still run.
I can still get in there. I can still,
There you
I
go.
wouldn't want to win the race, so I see what comes along with that. But we're
James,
happy that
thank you
you
so
could do it.
much. And
Thank you
Ron,
all.
do we have a motion?
Yes, the Public Works Committee has reviewed this, and we give approval for the special event application for 412 to have the Dick Beardsley race on September 6, 2025. And I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the special event application for Project 412 for the Dick Beardsley Race on September 6th. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thanks again, James.
Thank you. I'll leave some flyers and postcards on the back table.
Okay, so is there anyone in the audience that has an item on the agenda that they'd like me to move up? Because we have quite a ways to go before we're getting to be finished up here. Anybody that has an item? Yes, sir. And do you know which item number it is? I don't offhand, it's for Meg Johnson. Okay, let me just look here.
D.
So that would be 5D.
5D.
Why don't we, anyone else that has an item you want moved? So why don't we do this? Alderman Carlson is gonna take the Community Development Committee agenda. Sean, why don't you start with 5D and then go back to the top?
Sounds good.
All right.
All right, item 5D, consideration to a resolution approving a variance to allow a setback of 27 feet from the ordinary high water mark for construction of a deck at 1183 Long Beach Drive for Meg Johnson. Larry, you want to give us a brief summary?
Well, essentially, they're going to tear down part of the house and rebuild it, and they're going to rebuild the decks that exist there. The current deck is 21 feet from the ordinary high water mark. They could leave that or reconstruct that in an exact location. This is a better situation. They're moving it further away from the lake, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the variance.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Larry. Yep, as he mentioned, city staff recommended approval, planning commission recommended approval, the CDC recommended approval, and I so move.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve a variance at 1183 Long Beach Drive. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
Great. Item 5A, consideration to a resolution approving a quiet zone affirmation letter. As I understand it, this is something that has been required for a long time, but this is the first time they've asked for it. Is that right, Larry?
That is correct.
And
And they is the Federal Railroad Administration.
perfect. So the committee reviewed this and discussed it and recommend approving the affirmation letter, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution approving a quiet zone affirmation letter. Discussion on the motion.
So this isn't adding any more quiet zones, it's affirming what we currently have, correct?
This is reaffirming that we're going to continue the quiet zone and providing information that all of the safety measures are still in place at all the intersections.
Thank you.
Further discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
All right, item 5B, consideration to a resolution denying a variance to allow a 14-foot setback from roadside lot line at 600 Shorewood Drive for Sam Larson. We discussed this at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission recommended denial, and it came to CDC. Mr. Larson, as well as Scott from Meadowland Surveying, came and discussed it for some time with us last night. After that discussion, we talked about some potential changes, and the committee would like to refer it back to the Planning Commission for review at next month's meeting, and I so move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to refer the matter of the variance at 600 Shorewood Drive back to the Planning Commission. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries.
All right, 5C, consideration to a resolution approving a conditional use permit to allow the relocation of a guest cottage at 1354 and 1362 South Shore Drive for Mike and Leah Larson. Larry, you want to explain this one?
Yeah, this one is a little bit complicated. We do allow guest cottages by conditional use on lake lots, provided they meet the requirements of a twin home lot. In this case, they've got an existing guest cottage on the lot that's 864 square feet. Our ordinance allows them to be 700 square feet, but since this is an existing one, the Planning Commission is recommending that it be the 864 square feet. The lot does meet the requirements for a twin home lot. It's 37,000 square feet. The requirement is 26,000 square feet. So basically, they're taking a cabin which has its long side facing the lake and is 60 feet from the ordinary high water mark. They're turning it 90 degrees so that the narrow side faces the lake, and they're moving it back to a 75-foot setback, which is the requirement of our ordinance. They're also changing the lot line and moving it from the 1362 South Shore Drive to 1354 South Shore Drive. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Larry.
All right, we discussed this last night at the committee. Seemed like it made a lot of sense to us, at least in the review. The Planning Commission also recommended approvals, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution approving a conditional use permit at 1354 and 1362 South Shore Drive. Discussion?
So one question, does it make it two saleable lots then? Or will it
No,
remain one
they
lot?
have two saleable lots.
They've always had two saleable lots? and then-
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Further,
Basically a boundary line adjustment between the two lots.
Okay, thank you.
is there further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item 5E, consideration to a resolution approving the preliminary plat of Long Lake Acres at 2445 US Highway 10 West, Darrell and Elizabeth Justison. Larry?
This is a three-lot commercial plat. It's in a B3 district, and it meets all of our requirements. The Planning Commission recommends approval, and it's that simple.
All right, the committee discussed this last night. We recommend approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution approving the preliminary plat of Long Lake Acres. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item 5F, consideration to the first reading of an ordinance number 544, rezoning an area from RA Agricultural Residential District to R2, 1 and 2 Family Residence District at 865 Shorewood Drive for Bristlin Construction. I would also note that items F and G go together, but we'll do them as separate motions. Larry, can you just give us a rundown of both items F and G?
Sure. This is a property that's currently zoned RA. It's up at the top of the hill as you go on Shorewood Drive. They are proposing to split that into 10 residential lots. 5 of them would be large enough to be twin home lots. The plan, though, that I've heard is that they're planning single-family homes on those lots. But the potential is there for 5 of them to be twin homes.
All right, thank you, Larry. So the Planning Commission reviewed and recommended approval. The committee also reviewed and recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
So the motion, Sean, is just for item
Just for
F.
item 5F, correct.
There's a motion and a second on the table to give first reading to ordinance 544. Is there discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. First reading of ordinance 544 is given.
Item 5G, consideration to a resolution approving the preliminary plat of Linview Estates First Edition at 865 Shorewood Drive for Bristlin Construction. Planning Commission recommended approval. We reviewed it at the committee and recommend approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution approving the preliminary plat of Linview Estates First Edition. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right, item 5H, consideration to a resolution approving the final plat of Midwest Edition at 1255 US Highway 10 West for Midwest Bank. We've seen this one before in the preliminary plat. Planning Commission recommends approval, CDC recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution approving the final plat of Midwest Edition at 1255 US Highway 10 West. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That is it, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the Public Works Committee. Chairman Zeman.
Okay, the first item is 6A. This is discussion from MnDOT. They're looking at doing some road work there, and they're doing a study now because the work won't actually happen for another 4 or 5 years. But we all know about roundabouts, and now we're talking about J-turns over that property area. And a J-turn is what's happening east of Perma on Highway 10. And they're looking at the study on that, and this is for East Shore Drive and McHugh Road, 290th at Trunk Highway 10. And so they're really looking at doing that whole road area. And there's going to be an open house coming up on August 14th, right here where we're at, this room here with MnDOT from, I believe it's from 4:30 to 7. And they're going to explain this whole project, how they're going to be redoing that route out there. And Kelsey, have any comment on that?
I think that about sums it up.
So, but
August
come
14th.
but come to that meeting, you know, on August 14th. You'll get more details, especially if you live out in that area. But like I said, we're going to find out about J-turns. So that was just for discussion. The next item is 6C, and I'm going to have Sean King give me a little update because we've got a situation with some diseased trees.
Mayor and council, before you is the resolution setting the public hearing for the abatement of diseased trees. That's what we do every year about this time. We go through, we mark any diseased or dying trees in the city, and we bring it to you for removal.
Okay, and like Sean said, we've got 123 trees that we're going to be removing, and some of those are city trees and some are private property. And we've got the list of all the people here, but the committee looked over this, and we go ahead and make a resolution accepting this report and setting a public hearing for the abatement of diseased trees coming up and forward. And I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution accepting the diseased tree report and setting a public hearing for the abatement of those trees. And that'll be held at our next council meeting, right, Sean? Thank you. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, next item, item E, consideration approving plans and authorizing bids for the Washington Ballpark field. I'm going to have Kelsey talk to us a little bit about that.
Mayor and council, in your packet is a set of plans. I would kind of deem those about 90% set of plans. Not completely done with them. They're not 100%, but we are seeking authorization from the city council for advertisement of bids when they are ready, so that way we can try to move things along as quickly as we can. Bid opening will be contingent upon when we can actually get the advertising done, so I don't think we'll hit August council meeting, but we'll try to keep things moving along as quickly as we can. This first plan set is kind of our first bid package. Is basically all the kind of building items, so it includes the stadium, the dugouts, the concession stand, and then later this fall, we'll have a second phase, which will basically be the field improvements. Will be a civil bid package that will go out hopefully this fall.
Okay, and as Kelsey said, there's been a lot of work going into this ball field, and as you can see with the plans, there's a lot of plans there, and this is the first phase of it. And as we're sitting here, there's people out there looking at fundraising even on this project. So if somebody comes up and asks you if you'd like to support this Washington Ballpark, please give consideration to give it financing on it. But I'd like to go ahead and give approval for approving these plans and authorizing the bids, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the plans and authorizing the bids for the Washington Park Improvement Project. Discussion on the motion? And also Natalie, when is that open house? Or the kickoff is July 16th at 4:45? So if anybody's interested to come down to Washington Park, there's a baseball game that night, and we're gonna. Free brats, yeah. Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, next item is 6F. This is consideration resolution accepting preliminary engine reports and setting a public hearing for a proposed street and utility improvements for Linview Estates, first edition. I'll call on John Pratt for an update on that.
Mayor and council, there was a copy of the preliminary engineering report for the Linview Estates project included in your packet. This is effectively a subdivision project where we would be extending a street off of Shorewood Drive and extending sewer and water into the subdivision to serve the lots. It's about a $530,000 project. Vast majority of those costs would be assessed to the developer of the project. So this is the first step. We'll have a hearing and move towards design as the project moves on. So any questions?
Any questions for John? If not, Ron, you want to make a motion?
Okay, make a motion for resolution accepting the preliminary engineering report and this set a public hearing for the proposed street and utility project on Linview Estates, which is 10 lots and approximately 10 acres, a acre apiece, and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt a resolution accepting the preliminary engineering report and setting a public hearing for the street and utility improvements for Linview Estates First Edition. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and the last item is to accept the city engineering report for the month. John?
Mayor and council have touched on a number of these tonight, but just an overview of what's going on here. We're still got a few things to finish up on some projects from last year. Water tower continues to move along. The concrete pedestal or support structure for the new tower is now complete. Crews are working on the ground steel fabrication at this point, so they effectively start building the steel bowl on the ground around that pedestal and get it as far as they can before we hoist that thing up into the air. We anticipate that'll happen sometime later this fall after they get as much of the fabrication done as they can and get as much painting done as they can. Again, still targeting a completion of that sometime next spring. Haven't had any movement yet on the Heartland State Trail Trailhead project. I expect how we'll start on that sometime in the next couple of weeks. Forest Street is well underway. Contractors finished the underground utility construction and is moving on to the street reconstruction portion and getting things graded and put back together. We'll have portions of that, particularly Rossman Avenue, will be finished up here, I think, by the end of the week. Get that put back together prior to Water Carnival and some other activities down there. But the rest of the project should be done towards the end of the month or early part of August. Continue to make progress on the Westlake Drive Phase 3 project, which would include the city beach. Right now, we're kind of trying to push towards developing those 90% plans to bring back to the committee and to the council probably sometime in August. Right now, again, most of the work is focused on finishing up the beach component of that project, but continue to make progress there. There are a number of things going up at DMRA with the Legacy Grant project. Again, that's a kind of a conglomeration of a number of different projects, including a parking lot expansion that is just about complete. And the contractor is now going to start working on the Nordic ski loop and snowmaking infrastructure. It sounds like they're going to start on some of the treehouse improvements here in pretty short order. So there's a number of things happening there. Shorewood Drive, we talked through the assessments tonight on that. Again, I haven't heard a firm schedule from the contractor yet, but do anticipate that some of the sewer and water work will probably start later in July, and that'll probably be followed then by the street construction, hopefully in August. Alderman Zeman mentioned the Highway 10 and East Shore intersection study. Again, just a reminder for a public open house on that on August 14th. Come take a look at the options that are being considered and provide some input on that. I think we've taken care of 270th Avenue for the evening. And I also mentioned the Linview subdivision already. So I think that rounds it out, Mayor.
Questions for John? If not, I would entertain a motion for approval of the city engineer's report.
I move that we approve his report.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the city engineer's monthly project status report. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, got one more thing, and that's tomorrow night from 5 to 7 at the Pavilion. We're going to have an open house, and it's about planning the new city park planning with the Pavilion, talking about splash pads, talking about playground equipment and so forth. So if you're interested in the future of the Pavilion area, please come tomorrow night at the Pavilion from 5 to 7. That's going to be the same night as we have the old cars on display down there too, so it's going to be a busy night down there. So, but please plan to come from 5 to 7. That takes care of me, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. We will move now to the Finance Committee. Chairman Bulky.
Thank you, Your Honor. Item 7A, consideration of approving a facility use agreement with Detroit Lakes School District for the use of Washington Park, the tennis courts right there, as well as Snappy Park. This is something that we've never had in agreement with the school district as well. It is a 10-year agreement for $25,000 a year. The school district has approved and signed it already. This was unanimous decision at Finance Committee, and I so move.
Second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a facility use agreement with the Detroit Lakes Public Schools for the use of Washington Park, the Rec Center tennis courts, and Snappy Park. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you, Your Honor. Item 7B, consideration of supporting the local share of the FAA grant applications for the airport. Quick and dirty of this is the airport is looking to finish off all the pavement out there, the aprons. This would be, in Kelsey's term, putting a bow on the airport project. There was support for this at the Finance Committee, but realized this would probably be the end of the well for the airport. I know the county feels that same way, to my understanding. So this was unanimous approval for the grant application at the airport, and I so move.
Second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to support the local share for an FAA grant application for the airport. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you, Your Honor. Moving down to item 7F that we've added to the agenda. Per our city ordinance.
Charter.
That too. We need to call out a budget committee, which in years past, we've always made the finance committee. So I would make a motion to make it the finance/budget committee for this year, and I so moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to appoint the finance committee as our city budget committee. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Last thing, Your Honor, in the back of the packet is the budget meetings we have starting end of July and going through end of August. They're at 7 a.m. to talk about the city finances, budgets. It's open to all council members as well as everybody else that would like to have a say in finances there. So would love to see everybody there at 7 a.m.
Okay, thank you.
That's all, Your Honor.
We'll move on to the Public Safety Committee. Chairman Dahlman, was there anything on the agenda?
Nothing on the agenda. I just want to thank our great law enforcement and great fire department for getting us through this weekend, because you never know what's going to happen. From what I understand, there were no arrests, so thank you.
All right, that's good news. The Liquor and Gambling Committee,
Nothing additional, Your Honor.
nothing more there, okay. Mike, there was something from the
Yes.
Public Utilities
We have
Commission.
item 10A, a consideration to accepting bids for the jet substation material and awarding the contract. There was a bid letting, and there was an opening and a review of the bids handled by DGR Engineering. These are various items needed for that jet turbine and substation. The total of the items that were proposed for approval are $448,976.70. The engineer had originally estimated the material cost for these items would be $550,000, so actually coming in a little bit below. Public Utilities Commission discussed that earlier this morning, so I recommend approval, and I so move.
Second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the bids for the jet substation material and awarding the contract. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Anything else, Mike, from Public Utilities?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Okay. I still don't have a recommendation of the Arts and Culture Commission. I would entertain any nominees that the council may have in mind. I would like to make a recommendation to appoint Kate Campos to the library board to fill the seat vacated by Maureen Karsnia. And I would recommend Kate Campos.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to appoint Kate Campos to the library board. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Kelsey, is there any additional items that need to come before the council this evening?
Actually, Mayor, I have one procedural thing I gotta bring up.
Okay, go ahead.
Under our 270th Street resolution, that was early in the meeting, 4B, if you look at the resolution, it does two things. It orders the improvement and the authorization of the preparation of plans and specs. Per statute, the ordering of the improvement part of it requires a 4/5 vote, so you need 8 affirmative votes. So Jay wasn't here at the time, so one option is to take a revote on it. Otherwise, we'd have to move the ordering of the improvement part to the next month's meeting.
Okay. Jay, are you okay, voting because you weren't here to hear the presentation by the city engineer?
Yeah, we discussed it slightly at the
Okay, you're okay?
CDC committee, so I'm okay with that.
Okay, so I would entertain a new motion. Charlie, what should we do here? Help me out here.
I think you could just make the motion again, the entire motion again.
And
have it
not do
approved.
anything with the old motion?
Well, I don't know that we necessarily need to rescind it where if it's procedurally ineffective, I think we can just fix that by having another motion.
Okay, Ron, will you make a new motion, please?
Yeah, I'll make a new motion that we move forward on this then.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution ordering the improvements and authorizing plans and specifications for the 270th Avenue utility project. Again, we'll need all 8 votes. Discussion?
So Ron, is that motion the exact same as before, including the 7 removed properties?
No.
Oh, that was the other one.
That's the other
Okay,
one, yeah.
sorry,
We're not
I'm on the
moving
wrong
it.
spot. That was my bad.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I hear 8. Motion carries. Thank you, Kelsey. Anything further for city staff?
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing else. Just, as mentioned earlier, we have the open house tomorrow on the 9th, and then we also have the CGMC is going to be here in town at the Holiday Inn on the 10th. I know several of you have already signed up for it, so we'll see you there.
Okay, so we've mentioned the Midnot open house. We've mentioned the city park planning open house for tomorrow night. And the CGMC meeting, we've mentioned. We've also mentioned the budget committee meeting schedule. There's one more joint governance meeting date, and that's October 7th. And the county will be hosting that, and then the balance of the city council meeting dates are also listed on the agenda. So with that, is there anything further from the city council? Craig?
I just want to say thank you to Public Utilities for keeping the lights on during these stormy nights, so appreciate it.
Okay, Aaron?
I have nothing, Your Honor.
Wendy?
I just have a quick comment. I think as a government entity, we would be remiss in not recognizing the violence our state experienced shortly after our last meeting on June 14th in the death of 2 legislators and the injuries to 2 other legislators. And I think we need to recognize that it was a loss of human beings who are in roles like us, trying to do the best job that we can for our communities, and remind ourselves, me included, that words matter, they have impact, and that rhetoric, in fanning those flames of discontent can have some very serious outcomes, and that's not who we are. And I just wanted to share that reminder. It's a huge loss. I sat today with a woman in a meeting who just kind of broke down in tears because she worked with these people and she lost a good friend. And it was somebody just like you and me sitting here trying to do our work. And so I just wanted to remind everyone that we had a terrible tragedy. And as a government entity, I think it's important we recognize it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Ron?
Yes, I'd like to say we've got a big water carnival coming up. It starts here on Friday. The Water Carnival this year could use a lot of volunteers. So if you're an old JC and want to get involved again, get a hold of the co-admirals and tell them you want to sign me up for whatever project that may be needed. Also, I want to mention that this year, there's going to be our 90th anniversary of the Miss Northwest pageant, and it's going to be our last one because they're having a hard time getting candidates to be, to be queens. And so, we've got a lot of history that's changing here. But if you can help out for the Water Carnival here starting Friday, you get a hold of the people that are in charge and tell them, hey, sign me up. I want to volunteer.
All right, thank you. Matt?
Just huge thank you for 4th of July. Great time, great weather, great fireworks. Thanks for PD and Public Works.
All righty. Mike?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Sean?
Nothing for me, sir.
Jay?
Nothing.
Did you get those babies delivered?
I did.
The business of this council has come to a conclusion and the meeting's adjourned.